Anna, what's the best advice you ever got?
The best advice I ever got was from a supervisor when I was in grad school. And she said, never be ashamed of what you don't know yet, and never be ashamed of the parts of you that are still developing and still healing.
Mm, good. And John, to you, sir.
I think the best advice I ever got, perhaps, was when Anna and I were first dating, and I desperately wanted to marry her. And she said, I think we should wait. I'm not sure you really know who you are yet. And she was absolutely right. And we waited, and I'm so glad we did.
Ooh, ooh. So, but you weren't ashamed of who you weren't, John. So you listened to Anna's advice.
I didn't know what I didn't know. We have different advice here. I didn't know what I didn't know. I still had so much growing up to do, honestly. Um, I didn't, it wasn't that I wanted to get married. I kind of desperately needed to get married because there was something in myself that I was trying to fill with somebody else. And I
Mm,
learned that. I learned a little bit more about myself. And then when we finally did, in fact, get married, we were as solid as the roots of an oak tree.
wow, wow. That's interesting. So I'm gonna guess right. Long ago, maybe. Did you guys know these secrets from your awesome book that's coming out real soon? Right, the Go Giver Marriage. Congratulations! Wonderful, wonderful read. Love it. So did you know these things back then, or these things that you discovered? I don't know. Start with you. Are they, these natural, or how'd they come about?
Just like everybody else, I would say that we had a lot of growing up to do and a lot of coming home to ourselves, and really understanding what it takes to make a relationship work. I've known people who are therapists like myself who, you know, got divorced 2 or 3 times. It doesn't mean that just because you've got the degree that you've figured it out. And I think that both of us, we take very long walks every day. And it was almost 20 years ago that we decided to write the book. But there were so many Go Giver books scheduled to come out, and we wanted to be reverent to each one and not, crowd the field, that we waited. And so we took long walks and we talked about what are the secrets. Because for most of our married life, people have been asking us, what is your secret sauce? Like you guys are like newlyweds. What is it you're doing? And, we were just examining that, like, what is it? And what we came to was that our relationship is really based on a spirit of generosity. Sounds
Yeah.
incredibly simple, but
And what I would add to that is, Phil, and I completely agree with everything Anna said. When we first came together, we'd already lived a number of decades, and we'd been through a number of rodeos in our lives, and we weren't 20, and so we'd already, learned some things about life and relationships, and we learned more as we went. Been together for 25 years now. By the time we were writing this book, I think we had sorted a lot of this out. At the same time, you know, the writing of the book for us has also been a discovery process in a way. The writer Joan Didion once said, I write to find out what I think. And I quoted her in The Go-Giver Leader. And then she says to the character Ben, you know what I think? I think that we live to find out who we are. And both of those things apply here. I think in the process of writing The Go-Giver Marriage and codifying and articulating our secret sauce, what it is that we know and think and believe about marriage and about relationships, there's something magical about writing a story and writing a book. It allows you to find out what it is you know. you find yourself writing something and saying, "Oh, well, that's true," and it's really fun. And the process for us has even continued in doing all these podcasts and this promotional work that we're doing for the book itself. It's just been a wonderful, wonderful process of discovery for us. Talking with other people, every conversation, something new comes up that I know I hadn't thought of before. So it's yes, the answer is we've known these things for years, and also yes, we're discovering them as we go, anew, afresh.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. So 20 years in the making, though. That's so interesting because that would have been you guys would have been 5 years into your marriage and understanding, or 10 years into your marriage and understanding that, oh my gosh, like we have these secrets. So I'm genuinely curious, like, how do what like did they, I mean, did you learn them from somebody? You're a therapist, or someone
Yeah.
who does this. I mean, how did they actually pop up? I mean, John says you wrote them down, but I mean, 20 years ago, how did you have that? I'm That's wild.
Every secret is based on developmental theory. And what developmental theory is, in a nutshell, is that what you needed as an infant, you needed as a child, you needed it as an adolescent, as a young adult, and you still need it today. So each secret has a sort of magic side to it. And it also has an opposite. And we put the opposites in. The front half of the book is called the parable. The second half of the book is called the practice. And the practice is where we not only explain the secrets in terms of developmental theory, we also explain how they work, and we show you what they look like when they're dysfunctional, when they're not working.
Yeah.
And those are client stories. I was blessed to have clients who said, sure, change my name, use my story. And they were beautiful. So beautiful illustrations. So that gives people an opportunity to be able to learn how to practice it in their day-to-day living, and actually understand what's underneath it. And when we get into talking about the secrets, I'll explain it with each one, what's underneath it.
And I'll add to that, the secrets really have, each secret, we call them 5 secrets, and they really are simply 5 practical, accessible, simple ways of behaving every day. And they each have really three parents, 3 sources. They come, as Anna says, from a foundation in developmental theory. They also are all related to the 5 laws of stratospheric success in the original Go Giver. It's no accident that there's 5 and there's 5. And if you read both books and you really kind of delve into them, you're going to see that the one set of 5 can kind of overlay on the other set of 5. But finally, they also just come from experience, from our experience as a couple, but also our observation of every truly functional, thriving, flourishing, rich marriage we know, starting with our parents. We both come from parents who just taught us so much, and Bob Berg's parents for that matter as well. Our parents both stayed married their whole lives, and they both created these wonderful living examples of what does a richly growing marriage look like. And and we have lots of friends, as we all do, so we're able to observe from the experiences of others as well as our own.
Yeah. So what about stuff that doesn't work, though? I mean, did you learn anything from that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of dysfunction, right?
I've never encountered that.
No, well, maybe not in your marriage, but I've been married before, and not in my current marriage, right? But I've certainly had my share of that. So how, is it helpful to, because you mentioned that you do the flip side, right? You do the inverse. I mean, is it helpful to find the inverse sometimes first and to recognize that this is not the way we want it to be?
It's very helpful. But here's what I would say. If you try to build intimacy with another person before getting whole with yourself, every relationship you go into will be an attempt to complete yourself. And the reason I love sharing that on a podcast is that that's the essence. And what it is that everyone brings their emotional history, which is their emotional baggage. And that baggage starts unpacking as soon as the honeymoon's over. And whatever your patterns are, whatever it is, let's say that you had a critical and dismissive father. You're a guy that had a critical and dismissive father. You could never be enough for this guy. And so you have a tape that says, I'm not enough. And you're really trying to heal that. Now, you have a choice here when you get married. You can either be that guy or you can marry that person. And that's kind of how it works. We're unconsciously attracted to the very people, like moths to a flame. We're attracted to the people who will bring up the issues that we need to heal. And that's why there's so many divorces, because people bump up against that and they're like, yeah, my dad did this to me. I'm not putting up with this again. Goodbye. But the truth is, marriage gives us an opportunity for a great deal of healing to happen. And that's if people can have a spirit of generosity, compassion, empathy, and can allow for each other's issues to rise up and be witnessed, discussed. You know, it doesn't mean it has to be a knockdown, drag out fight, but rather an opportunity to learn. And there will be moments where there's knockdown, drag outs, fights, because each person is so reactive in that moment. But it still doesn't mean that you can't come together afterwards and say, I overreacted because when you do this, I get really scared. I get really afraid, and it makes me nervous about where we're going and if we're going to be okay. And, you know, now you're putting it in a frame that someone can receive. So, yeah.
That's so interesting and so helpful. So with that, you that's the second time you've mentioned generosity. I think it's important that, you know, in the Go Giver Marriage, I feel that generosity throughout the book and very strongly. But can you define that for us, John? Maybe you can define generosity as you see it from Anna, and what, you know, how that played through the book, because I think that is important.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's the heart of the original Go Giver. It's the heart of all the Go Giver books. You know, the principle behind the Go Giver books, codified as Pindar's principle, is the more you give, the more you have. And it flies in the face of mathematical logic, you know, the laws of traditional economics, the dismal science, because those laws say the more you give away, the less you got. If I give you my toys, then I don't have my toys anymore. You have them. Not fair. Wah. But in the interactions of mature human beings, it's not that way. The more attention I give you, the more care, the more love, the more compassion, the more kindness, the more, you know, of any human qualities that I give you, it doesn't subtract from me, it enriches me. We all end up richer. It creates a rising tide that raises all the boats. So that's the heart of the Go Giver books, that living with generosity is not only a noble and an altruistic way to live, it's pragmatic. It's a way to enrich your own experience, your own life as well. Obviously, in the original Go Giver book, we put that primarily in a business context. Here, we're looking at it through the lens of relationships. But you could see the seed of that in the original Go Giver book. It was where there was a scene between Joe and his wife, and where he really started to get the principle. And flip that around, we've had plenty of people look at the Go Giver Marriage and say, you know, I could use these principles in my office with my colleagues. And they're absolutely right. So it's the heart of the Go Giver, the 5 secrets, is each of them is about generosity. They're all about ways of being generous with your spouse, and ultimately also being generous with yourself.
That's wild, right? Being generous with ourselves, being patient with ourselves. I mean, we think about relationships, I think we miss that so often, right? I give all, and then I'm empty, and then I'm looking around like, what the heck happened here? I think that's really interesting, John. That's good. So
it happens all the time.
Yeah, and giving isn't an opportunity to be a doormat or a martyr.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Good thought there. So let's, oh, go ahead, John. Go.
Yeah, I was going to add to that and say it's not a sacrifice in the sense of giving up. It's an act of devotion in the sense of giving toward.
That's, yeah. Wow. That's very thought provoking. That's very interesting and really something to sit with as we think about that. Wow. So with that, you know, let's talk about giving, right? Let's go a little bit deeper in the book here. The 5 secrets, right, are awesome. It's interesting, right, that they're not secrets. Once you read them, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like I got this. But I think they're often misused. So let's each of you can unpack, you know, one. And let's talk about each of those. So, Anna, you want to start with your favorite one there that we talked about?
Well, I always say there's not a favorite because we have 5 kids, and there definitely is not a favorite.
They're all different.
They're all different, and they all have a unique way of interacting in the marriage. So, but this is a favorite for a very, primary reason. It is it is the basis of primary narcissism, which is the developmental stage that is present when you're an infant and a young developing toddler. You're just developing your sense of self. And so you are completely dependent on your environment to tell you who you are. And that's just so, that's so unique and important. I mean, there's nothing more powerful than being a baby and having an adult looking down into your face, cooing at you and, blowing kisses on your belly and telling you you're an incredible baby, and just loving on you. The truth is, when we're children, we really need that encouragement and appreciation. We need someone who's constantly telling us what a great kid we are and what we're doing and how smart we are and all those things. We need it as an adult as well. And we need it more desperately than any of us want to acknowledge. The need to be witnessed is, in my view, the most primary need that we have. The need to be seen, listened to, understood, and seen in every possible way. So the first secret is the secret to appreciate. And what it really says is, if you really want to give to your partner in a powerful way, take 2 to 3 times a day, look at the ways that you love them, and come to some place of, when you do this, I'm so moved by it. And I love the way you are with our children. I love the way you talk to our children. I love the way our children, listen to you. And I just want you to know you're such a great father. I recently had a client do this. And, it was that he had taken all the kids Christmas shopping and he had helped them wrap their presents and taken them out for ice cream. And, she had a screamingly difficult week. And she was so fried, and it was Friday night. And on Saturday morning, she took her opportunity to say, you're just a hero to me. I mean, I don't even know how to say it. I just feel so blessed that you're the father of our kids. And, he was kind of speechless. She said he was just so blown back in his chair. And he said, thank you. Like, there's nothing I want more than to be a good father. That's just one opportunity. It takes only 3 minutes a day to take 3 times a day to really authentically appreciate your partner. And yet those opportunities go by and we just ignore them. We're so busy with, our work, the kids, paying the bills, cleaning the house, making dinner, whatever it is. We're not taking the moments that we could. I think that even as a mother, and I always apply this to parenting because I care deeply about it and I want to write about it. I'm currently researching and talking to people from all over the country and the world about how they parent, because I think that kids so profoundly need this. If you want to have a really healthy, well-adjusted teenage daughter who knows how to say goodbye to her first bad boyfriend, then build her self-esteem the entire way up. Because when she gets to be 16, she may be a pain in your butt, but she's also going to be the person that says to him, not putting up with this.
Yeah.
Wow. That's good. So 2 to 3 times a day, just a couple minutes there. I mean, pragmatically, do we put that on our calendar? I mean, how do we actually execute that, Anna? Because to your point, right? We blow past it. We get really busy. I mean, do you recommend that, or is that kind of cheesy? I mean, I don't know. I'm genuinely curious because I don't see. I certainly try to do that, but I know that I'd probably miss. So, I mean, is that okay, or is that like something we have to commit to memory in 9, 12, and 7 or something?
I think we all miss. I think that it's and let me tell you about the opposite, then you'll understand, because neurologically you're burning a groove in your brain. You can either go one way or the other. So which way do you want to go is really the decision. So the opposite of appreciate is to criticize. And straight out of grad school, I trained with a phenomenal therapist who was trained by John Gottman. And criticism is what John Gottman calls one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, meaning criticism, if it's continual in a marriage, will lead to a divorce. there's 4 elements that will absolutely lead to divorces, and criticism is a primary one. I mean, it's so present in so many ways. People are passive aggressive with their criticism. They're constantly making little innuendos. Well, you could have picked up your socks. I mean, come on. It's like, it's constant. People get into the constant little ragging on their partner because they think it's going to change their behavior. It doesn't change their behavior. It only makes them feel worse about themselves and worse about you. And the question is, do you want to be a person who has a hands on your hips stance? Or do you want to be that person who really decides to burn a new groove in your brain? Because neurologically, you're going to go one way or the other. And it's really important to, I find that when people practice it, and, we have people holding each other accountable who are best friends. We have people who are in men's groups, women's groups, and in coaching. With our coaching clients, we absolutely hold them accountable and ask them what happened this week with The Secret. So, I think it's just about making it a priority. And if you need to set an alarm, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Set an alarm on your phone, and it can be an incredibly authentic love note sent through text, but it's an opportunity.
Yeah, Phil, you asked, is that cheesy to make a date in your calendar or set an alarm or whatever? And I want to say there's no cheesy here. And here's what it is for a lot of us. By the way, this is something that we already know, or that we already knew, and we probably already did when we were first in love, right? When you're in that first early romance, you appreciate everything because this is the most amazing creature you've ever discovered in your life. So everything about her is beautiful. Everything about him is perfect. Everything he says is funny, hilarious actually, and brilliant. Her every move is just a sensation. That's normal. That's the blazing fire of the kindling in the newspaper when you're getting the fire going. But we're looking for the hardwood logs here for the long term. And what happens is, after a little while, like as we say, after the honeymoon, but it just means after a little while you've been together, then you have other concerns that start to crowd in. You have kids, you have a home, a household, you have financial issues. Things go up, things go down. You have career issues, professional issues, you have health issues, you have parental and family issues. Stuff happens all around you that demands your attention. So you start to kind of unconsciously or automatically assume, she already knows I love her. She already knows I think she's gorgeous. I don't have to keep saying it, right? We've already covered that ground. And so now we got to pay attention to the furnace that he's replacing. No, you know what? It's not going to work because of what Anna said about this primary narcissism, this need that the baby has, the infant has. It never goes away. Each of us have a baby inside us, an infant inside us, a little toddler inside us who's saying like, well, don't you think I'm awesome anymore? I know you told me yesterday, but I forgot. That's all of us. So to bring it up again, to start to practice this, like it's fine for us to say you should 3 times a day tell your spouse, find something about your spouse that you love and take a moment to tell them. Sounds so simple. But for us, it can be like a muscle you haven't used in 20 years. It can be awkward. It can be stiff. And it can feel awkward and stiff. Like, honey, I need, have you got a second? Yeah, what's wrong? Oh, no, nothing's wrong. I just wanted to say, and now I'm feeling like a total idiot. How do I tell my wife, whom I haven't told for 25 years, how much I love her? How do I tell her, I just want to say, I think you're so thoughtful the way you are with your friends. You're a great friend. And she's like, yeah, is the furnace not okay? Or like, this is a weird conversation. It can be. And you know what? That's fine. Awkward is fine. Stiff is fine. Cheesy is fine. Notes in your calendar is fine. Reminders is fine. Any of it is fine. Is just do it. Start doing it. We had a conversation with a friend the other day who said that he had started a practice with his 8 and 5-year-old kids who would tend to fight like combat soldiers. And he said he would catch them fighting where he used to just yell at them and say, kids, stop it, because it's driving him crazy. Instead, he said, I would separate them and say, okay, right now, don't even think about it. Right now, each of you say 3 nice things about the other one. And he said, the kid would go, well, he's good at math. He likes dinosaurs. And he said, it was grudging. It was rote. There was no feeling in it at all, but they weren't fighting anymore, and it stopped. And it works because, like Anna said, you're burning a neurological groove. You always are. You're building the habit, and it's going to go to the right or to the left, one way or the other. If you start looking for things to praise and appreciate and single out that you love, you're shutting down the criticism faucet because you got one pipe.
And I'm going to add one more story that I think really is just so fun. I have a client that has been married for 30 years. He calls himself the husband who's asleep at the wheel. I mean, he says, I don't know, my wife is great. I can't think of anything to say, So I really probed with him. He had to come back with homework, like find things that he really liked. So he came back really triumphant one day and he said, my wife, she makes these cakes all the time. And I know she makes them because she knows I love them. And he said, so I stopped her in the kitchen. She was frosting a cake. And, we're just talking little square sheet pan cakes, nothing special, just not layer cakes or special things, but cakes. And it was a carrot pineapple cake. And he goes, that's my favorite. And he said, he pulled her close to him and he said, I never tell you this. And I'm such a dumb idiot for not ever telling you this. But I really want you to know, I know you make these cakes all the time because I love them. And I probably shouldn't eat as many slices as I do, but I love them. And I just want you to know, I love that you make these cakes and I love that you make them for me. And I just want you to know, I love you. And he said she just was floored. And she gave him a big hug and she said, don't worry, baby, I'm going to make you cakes until you drop. And he said the rest of the day was like the most pleasant, sweet day. He said she was kind of humming and she was like on air because he had taken that moment. He said he was shocked by how powerful it was between them. She said she took 2 opportunities later in the day to hug him, which she said spontaneous hugs are not something after 30 years that they're doing as much. And he said, I didn't realize how much I need them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I want some pineapple carrot sheet cake now. So that's,
me too.
We'll get the recipe afterwards. So that's fantastic. I mean, that is so simple. I mean, as I'm listening, right, I'm kind of also looking at the clock like, wow, that's like 37 seconds, 38 seconds. That's not difficult.
Yes.
That's something we do have time for. That is something we can make time for. And I love that throughout, in the book at the end there, you make it so practical for us. Anna, that is so wonderful because John, that I love your stories, man. I've read every Go Giver. I love them all. As I've told you many times, man, Go Giver Leader always makes me cry every time I read it because it's just so good. But this one, it's got the best of you. And then your wonderful wife, we get to bring in some practicality there and say, oh boy, how do we do this in actual work? And I just love that. I just want to say, folks that are thinking, boy, relationships, right? Lasting stuff. I would bet this could probably work in the workplace. I mean, you don't tell somebody necessarily, you nice butt, but you probably do mention something that they do, right? That's good, and be specific about that because we often do criticize. We often are critical. And sometimes even of ourselves, right? That's the other thing. I mean, John, you mentioned that early on that we have to be
generous with yourself.
Yeah. More generous with yourself. So I love that. So, wow. So appreciation, that's powerful. That's possible, which is really important. So John, you've got one that you want to talk about today. And then folks, you got to get the book to get all 5 because it's totally worth it. I've got the PDF. I've read it a bunch of the times. I think, John, didn't you send me the Word document like early on too, like a long time ago? So, I mean, I've loved this book for a long time and I'm really excited it's coming for folks. So John, go ahead, please share yours.
Yeah. For its parents, you're like one of its godfathers.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, one of the concepts in the book, one of the core ideas is that when you're in a relationship, a meaningful long-term relationship, which we're calling marriage, that's what we're really writing about, is that there's 2 people, there's me and there's you, and we're each whole, different self-contained individuals. And then there are overlap. When we overlap, there's like this third space created, this third entity. It's almost like a third person in the room, you, me, and then this other thing, which is the marriage, which is the overlap of us, which is the us. And the us is really the focus of so much of the Go-Giver marriage and so much of what of our work. It's easy, it's almost natural, it's automatic in a long-term relationship to start carrying and creating a scorecard. And the scorecard is about what's fair, who did the dishes how many times this week, who's held up what end of the chore burden, who gets to complain. You each get 5 minutes, we each get 15 minutes, we each get an hour, whatever it is. So this scorecard is like, you did this, it means I get to do that. It's death to a relationship, because what the scorecard does is the moment you're keeping score, you withdraw from the us. The moment you keep score, you're separating into you and me, and there is no more overlap. There is no more us. And when you do that, you're starving the us. The us is an entity that is always either growing or shrinking. You're either feeding it or you're starving it. It never stays the same. There is no stationary about this us. It's a living thing, so you can't take it for granted. If you do, it will starve. And somebody earlier mentioned about divorces. Anna was talking about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and how Gottman says they will lead to divorce. And it's not just divorce we're talking about. It's the marriages that don't divorce, but kind of atrophy. They kind of go into a long, deep freeze, where that is the starved us. The us exists, but it's nothing but skin and bones. So the third secret is something we call allow. And what allow means is when one of us is having a difficult time, for whatever reason, something major, like we had an illness or a surgery or an accident, or we've lost a parent or whatever, lost a job, some catastrophe, or if it's fairly minor, we had a bad night's sleep, something is aching, we had a difficult day at work, kids are acting out, whatever it is. When one of us is having a difficult time, the other one of us is called to give us some space. Allowing is about giving your partner a little extra care and attention, or a little bit of extra room, a little extra time, a little extra space. It's having empathy. It's giving your partner the benefit of the doubt. If they're cranky, instead of assuming it's about me and getting defensive, because when you get defensive, you automatically separate. That's what defensiveness does. It's just the same thing as getting aggressive. You separate either way. Instead of getting defensive, become compassionate, become empathetic. I don't know why she's upset. In fact, I have no idea. But instead of assuming that it's about me, I'm going to assume that it's something that's making her feel bad. And what she needs me to be right now is just here, listening, hovering in the background, doing the dishes, taking out the trash, taking the kids out for half an hour, whatever it is she needs. If I can, I just want to provide that, if that's possible for me to do. Because I'm going to allow her to be in the space that she is. Allowing means allowing your spouse or your partner to be who they are, how they are in this moment, instead of trying to change them. And Anna alluded to this earlier. What we tend to do when conflict arises is to try to change the other person, make them more like us. It's a shock when you've been dating for a while and you're in the flurry of romance, and all of a sudden you discover one night that your partner doesn't want to watch the movie you want to watch. They like a different kind of movie than you. Like, what? That's not possible. We're the same person. We all love the same movies, right? Both of us. But no, your partner does things differently than you. They're a different person. They react to things differently. Anna gives this beautiful example of a miscarriage. It's a very common experience for a woman who has a miscarriage, for her to, I should really let her talk about this instead of me, because she does it so beautifully, but I'll talk about it from my perspective. When someone has a miscarriage, it can be profoundly tragic for them, tremendous sense of loss. It can carry with it sense of failure, like, what did I do wrong? My body betrayed me. What happened here? There are hormonal shifts that are involved. It's like postpartum blues, and you don't have the treasure, the gift, the prize of the infant to compensate for these postpartum blues. It's just a horrible feeling of emptiness and failure. And the guy may not appreciate that. He may not get it. And so it's really easy from the guy's point of view. Now I'm using an example that is guy girl, but this could be applied in any situation. It's easy for the guy to start going like, yeah, I know this is hard, but let's get over it. Can we move on? No, we can't move on. What's called for in that moment is to allow for the fact that she's going to process this grief differently than you, at a different speed, at a different pace. It means something different. That could be true if the spouse dies. That could be true if a puppy dies. That could be true if a business is lost. That could be true of any kind of misfortune that befalls. We process it differently, and we need to allow each other to process it differently and pick up the slack. There's a case in our book. There's an example of a couple where they had a child who died, and they were both just grief-stricken. I've gone through this, and I know this one. This is Phil says the Go-Giver Leader always makes him cry. This is from the Go-Giver Leader, and it comes back in the Go-Giver Marriage because we get to meet that person, Melanie, again. And she says that they experienced the loss of that child very differently. At first, they were both grief-stricken, but after a year or so, it's like he wanted to move on and have more kids, and she wasn't in that place at all. So he had to learn: Are we gonna be on the same team around this, or are we gonna start separating into the red team and the blue team?
Wow. Anna, do you want to add a little bit to that?
I do. The opposite of allow is control. And control is, the foundation of codependence. I love you, but I'd like you to lose 20 pounds so I can feel more attracted to you. Mm-hmm. I love you, but, I want you to be this way. I want you to talk less when we're out at parties. It's all the ways that your partner tells you that you're either not enough or too much. And those are really hurtful. And so allow is also that moment when, you really just have to allow your partner to be who they are, the way they are, how they express themselves. It's different than you, but this is the person that you married. This is the person that you're in this long-term committed relationship with. So allowing them to express how they're feeling or be the way they are. And the client example in the book is another situation which is common. A lot of anxiety is biochemical. And I really love to share this with clients because a lot of men and women don't know it. But especially for women, anxiety is driven by estrogen dominance or estrogen loss. And so it's the two sides of the spectrum. And all that it means is that they can be cycling and have moments in the month where they're just really anxious about things. And anxiety can drive the people around the anxious person crazy. And I know from personal experience that your anxiety is spilling all over people around you if you have anxiety. And it's very difficult to manage and control personally. I mean, you want to shut it down, but you're feeling anxious. So I feel like allow is one of those moments where the person that's trying to shut it down and control it often has their own issues with anxiety or their own issues with feeling out of control in relation to it, or their own issues with feeling out of control from childhood issues that happened to them. So in this case, the woman had been assaulted in college. She had long-term anxiety issues that she had really worked on, but the husband was constantly saying to her, cut it out. It's not that big a deal. And that is not what to say to someone who's anxious.
It's like telling a depressed person, cheer up.
Yeah. And eventually what he realized was that he had his own very difficult history with an alcoholic father who had denial as his number one state of being. So he was really accustomed to having his feelings denied and having a lot of situations denied. And so he was trying to control everything that was going on around him, which is very common for children that come out of alcoholic homes. And So he was being very codependent. He was trying to shut her down. And when he realized it, they had an aha moment where he said to her, "Wow, your anxiety makes me anxious." And that was a real breakthrough, because that's when they came together, and allow became how they healed. They both allowed each other to feel their discomfort, because him trying to control her was his discomfort. And it's just as valid as her anxiety. So it was a big healing moment for them.
And that happens a lot, Phil. You know what happens when you start to relax your grip on the situation and stop trying to control the situation, whatever the situation might be, big or small, and stop trying to, Pygmalion your partner and make him be who you think they ought to be. What happens frequently is you start learning stuff about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's like this guy, James, from the book, who came to grips with the fact that he was having his own anxiety rising, or it could be many other things. You start to learn more about yourself, and you also start to find resources in yourself that you didn't know you had. You start to tap more strength in yourself, tap more patience in yourself, tap more humanity, tap more compassion. You start to actually become a bigger, better, more human being. You become more of yourself. We like to say that the purpose of a marriage is to enroll your partner in becoming, your spouse is like your partner in becoming a better you. That's what your partner's there for. They're not just there for companionship. They're there to be a platform, like a launching pad for you to just blossom and be an even bigger you. It's the opposite of being enemy combatants in two corners of a ring, right? Which is how it can devolve. No. We come together in the center, we're the us, and out of that us, we both grow into far better versions of ourselves.
Wow. That's awesome. That's a great way to wrap it.
It only happens if you allow. It only happens if you let go of trying to control the situation.
Absolutely.
And it's the reason we like to explain this secret on podcasts, is that it's easy. If you were just to say what the word is, it would just be so easy to misunderstand what it is.
Yeah.
And so that's also why we wrote the second half of the book, so that people could get a deeper dive into what it really means.
Awesome. That's beautiful. So much there. Allow, be generous with yourself, appreciate. So many great secrets. The book is fantastic. It's the Go Giver Marriage. You can get your pre-order at gogivermarriage.com. They've got some cool little extras you can get. You get a fireside chat with them, hosted by cool enough Dan Rockwell from Leadership Freak, which is nice, and a mini masterclass on diffusing tension and negotiating conflict and the mindset of lasting love. And if you get a whole bunch of them, hey, you got a copy. Look at you. That's awesome.
It's the audio visual.
Very nice. I can't wait to get mine. Look at both of you. I'm so jealous. I wish I had a copy to hold up too, but I'm super excited for you both. Congratulations on a beautiful book. It's really wonderful. It's got so much great insight and so much that we can do. I love the story, like I said, and I love the practical stuff that we can put in place as well. So thank you both for sharing some of yourselves and your beautiful stories with me today. And for everybody listening, I hope you got something out of this and you get the secrets of lasting love. Go get a copy of Go Giver Marriage and learn so you can have better relationships and maybe be a little more gentle with yourself. Thank you, my friends. I appreciate you.